My mother-in-law slapped me so hard my left earring flew into the champagne tower. Glasses shattered. 180 guests went silent. The violinist stopped in the middle of a note. Vivian Hart stood there in her silver gown, chest rising, eyes full of hate, and hissed, "You will not embarrass this family tonight." I didn't touch my cheek. I just looked past her. Because across the ballroom Tyler's fiancé had gone completely pale. And then, she looked at me like she knew exactly who I was. "Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Because what happened next didn't just ruin an engagement party. It destroyed an entire fake life. My name is Ava Mercer. I was 33 years old when Vivian Hart slapped me in front of half the city. But the truth is, she had been hitting me for years. Not always with her hand. Sometimes with a smile. Sometimes with a joke. Sometimes with that soft little voice women like her use when they want to cut you without leaving blood. I married her oldest son, Daniel, when I was 27. At first I thought he was different. Quiet. Safe. After my father died and left my mom drowning in medical bills, safe felt like enough. Daniel came from the kind of family that looked perfect in Christmas cards. Big house. Black SUVs. Monogrammed towels. Country club brunches every Sunday at 11:30. The Harts loved appearances. They loved photos. They loved labels. They loved being seen. What they didn't love was me. I wasn't from old money. I didn't know which fork to use for oysters. I said, yeah, instead of certainly. And I worked. A lot. Vivian noticed all of it. The first time I went to their house, she looked at my dress, smiled, and said, "Simple. That's brave." At our wedding, she told the makeup artist right in front of me, "Do what you can. Ava has a difficult face when she's tired." I laughed that one off. I laughed off a lot of things. That was my first mistake. Because when you laugh at disrespect, people think you handed them permission. And Vivian took that permission and built a palace with it. Daniel never stopped her. That was my second mistake. He would squeeze my knee under the table and whisper, "She doesn't mean it." But she did mean it. Every single word. Then there was Tyler. The golden son. Tyler Hart was 29, tan in every season, loud in every room, and praised for things other adults do before breakfast. He posted quotes about hustle. He drove leased cars. He called himself a businessman. Vivian adored him. If Tyler made a sale, she posted it. If Tyler wore a suit, she cried. If Tyler breathed near a profit margin, she called him a genius. Meanwhile, I handled the things nobody clapped for. The bills. The spreadsheets. The vendor calls. The late-night fires. Because 3 months after I got married, I learned something Daniel had conveniently forgotten to mention. The Hart family wasn't rich. They were drowning. That house. Leveraged. The cars. Leased. The family company. 2 missed payrolls away from collapse. Hart and Vale interiors looked luxurious on Instagram. Cream sofas. Marble tables. Candlelight showrooms. Behind the scenes it was a corpse and lipstick. And that's when everything changed. I found out the truth on a Tuesday night in October. It was 1:14 a.m. Daniel was sitting at our kitchen island with a bottle of whiskey and a stack of red-stamped notices. I still remember the numbers. $417,000 in debt. 19 vendors unpaid. 46 days from default. He looked at me and said, "If this gets out, my mother will lose everything." Not we. Not I. Her. I should have walked away right then. I didn't. Because I loved my husband. Because I was stupid. Because women are trained to mistake self-destruction for loyalty. I had spent 8 years in brand strategy and financial operations. I knew how broken companies breathe when they're dying. Fast. Shallow. Desperate. So I stepped in. I used the $68,000 my grandmother left me when she passed. Every cent. I renegotiated supplier contracts in 12 days. I rebuilt their entire e-commerce system from scratch. I fired a shipping vendor that had been bleeding them for 18 months. I worked until 2 a.m., slept 4 hours, woke up, went to my own job, then came home and worked on Hart and Vale again. For 11 months I lived like that. Coffee. Spreadsheets. Panic. Silence. I skipped my best friend's baby shower. Missed my mother's biopsy appointment. Spent our first anniversary answering customer emails from a hotel bathroom while Daniel slept. And still, nobody said thank you. Vivian told people Tyler, Saved the company. Tyler believed it after a while. That was the sick part. He'd show up at noon in loafers and talk about vision while I'd already handled 6 crises before breakfast. One night I found him filming a motivational reel in the warehouse. I was in the background on my knees, taping damaged cartons closed. He looked at me and said, "Can you move? You're killing the aesthetic." I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. By the end of the first year, Heart and Veil was profitable. Small, but real. At 14 months we crossed $1.2 million in revenue. At 22 months, it hit $2.8 million. The business magazines started calling. Vivian bought new pearls. Tyler bought a watch he couldn't pronounce. And do you know what Daniel told me? Let Tyler be the face. You know how my mother is. That sentence broke something in me. Not all at once. Just a crack. Then another. Then another. Like ice thinning under your feet while everyone pretends not to hear it. But he didn't know one thing. When I saved that company, the emergency restructuring papers were signed in a lawyer's office downtown. No bank would fund the Hearts. No investor would touch them. So my cash injection became the rescue capital. And in exchange I got 51% ownership. Majority control. On paper, Heart and Veil was mine. Nobody talked about that part. Nobody wanted to. Because their whole world depended on one lie. That Tyler was the golden success story. And I was just the wife standing beside him. The next 2 years were surreal. I made the company what it looked like online. I built the vendor relationships. I built the seasonal launches. I built the customer retention system. I built the thing they bragged about at dinner parties. And the better it did, the worse they treated me. Vivian introduced me as Daniel's wife, even in rooms where people were literally praising my work. At a charity gala, one woman complimented the Heart and Veil winter campaign. Vivian smiled and said, "Yes, Tyler has such instincts." I had created that campaign in one weekend with a fever of 102. Christmas, Tyler got a Rolex. I got a candle. Not even a nice one. A vanilla candle from the showroom clearance shelf. Daniel saw my face and whispered, "Don't make this a thing. Don't make this a thing." That became the soundtrack of my marriage. Your pain? Inconvenient. Your humiliation? Bad timing. Your silence? Preferred. So I stopped asking to be seen. That was the moment they lost me. Quietly I started preparing. I opened a private account. Moved my contracts. Spoke to a corporate attorney. And one name kept appearing in those meetings. Blake Capital. A serious investment firm. Clean money. Sharp people. They were interested in buying a large share of Heart and Veil. Not from Tyler. From me. The deal wasn't public yet. Only a few people knew. "Mom," my daughter whispered, gripping my wrist so hard her nails pressed little white moons into my skin, "don't turn around yet." We were standing in the middle of her engagement party, under a ceiling full of crystal lights, with 162 guests smiling into champagne glasses like life was soft and perfect. Then she said, "Ciao." I turned. And the man standing near the grand piano, older, broader, gray at the temples but still wearing the same crooked half-smile I had kissed 20 years earlier, was my husband. The husband I had been told died in a plane crash the night I gave birth. The husband I had buried in a closed casket. The husband I had mourned for 2 decades. He was alive. He was breathing. And he was staring at me like I was the ghost. Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Because what happened next didn't just ruin an engagement party. It ripped open 20 years of lies in one single night. My name is Claire Calloway. 20 years ago I was 26, 9 months pregnant, and dumb enough to believe love could protect me from a powerful family. My husband, Ethan Calloway, came from old Charlotte money. His father, Robert, owned 2 private aviation companies and 3 hangars. His mother, Elaine, wore pearls to breakfast and looked at people the way other women looked at dirty windows. I came from a 2-bedroom ranch house and a mother who worked double shifts at a pharmacy. The first time Elaine met me, she smiled at my Target shoes and said, "Ethan always did collect strays." I should have left then. I didn't. Ethan made promises in a low, gentle voice. He always did. He told me he wasn't like them. He told me we'd build our own life. He told me love was enough. But love is a weak roof when a storm has money behind it. By the time I was 8 months pregnant, I had already learned the rules of that family. Smile. Stay grateful. Don't ask questions. Don't embarrass them. Robert spoke, everyone adjusted. Elaine judged, everyone nodded. And Ethan always folded. Quietly. Fiddly. Like a good son trained from birth. The night everything shattered was October 14th. I remember the date because it was printed on the hospital bracelet they cut off my wrist after delivery, and I kept that bracelet in a drawer for 19 years. I went into labor at 6:42 in the evening. My contractions were 7 minutes apart. Ethan was supposed to stay with me. He had promised. He kissed my forehead in triage and said, "I'm not going anywhere." 40 minutes later, Robert arrived in a navy overcoat, pulled Ethan into the hallway, and suddenly there was some urgent issue with a company flight. A client, a deal, a signature, a man in Denver who couldn't wait until morning. I begged Ethan not to go. I was holding the bed rail so hard my fingers cramped and I said, "Please. Please don't leave me tonight." He kissed my hand and told me, "I'll be back before she's born." That was the last lie he ever told me as my husband. Our daughter Emma was born at 11:58 p.m. 7 pounds 2 ounces. Dark hair. Loud lungs. I was crying and laughing at the same time when Robert came into the recovery room at 12:36 in the morning with Elaine behind him, her face stiff and pale. He didn't sit down. He didn't ask how I was. He just said, "There's been an accident. The company jet went down in bad weather outside Knoxville. No survivors." I had been a mother for 38 minutes when I became a widow. That's when everything changed. I didn't even get the mercy of seeing a body. They told me the fire was too severe. The crash site was too damaged. The casket at the funeral 6 days later was closed and draped in white roses because Elaine said lilies were tacky. I was still bleeding from childbirth, still moving like my bones had come apart, standing in black shoes that pinched, holding a 6-day-old baby while people whispered how tragic it all was. Robert gave a speech about Ethan's honor. Elaine cried into a silk handkerchief. And nobody noticed that not one single personal item of Ethan's had been recovered. No watch. No wedding ring. No wallet. No phone. I noticed. But every time I asked, Robert shut me down. "Do you really want details, Claire?" he said once, like I was being cruel for wanting the truth. Then the coldness began. Quiet at first. Then sharper. They set up a trust for Emma but controlled every dollar. They told me the life insurance was tied up in corporate loss. They told me I should move out of the house Ethan and I had rented because it was emotionally unhealthy. Elaine said grieving mothers sometimes become unstable. Robert said I was too young to manage money and should let family advise me. Family. That word always sounded expensive in their mouths. When Emma was 3 months old, I found out Robert had cut me out of Ethan's business holdings 3 weeks before the crash, using paperwork Ethan had supposedly signed. When I said the signature looked wrong, Robert stared at me and said, "Be very careful not to let grief make you paranoid." I had no money for a lawyer. No sleep. No proof. Just milk-stained shirts, cracked hands, and a baby who woke every 2 hours. So I did what women do when the world decides to be cruel. I survived it. I moved into a 600-square-foot apartment over a laundromat. The pipes banged at night. The windows leaked in January. I worked mornings at a dental office, nights doing hospital billing from home, and weekends balancing invoices for a construction company owned by a friend of my mother's. I slept in 90-minute pieces for almost 2 years. I learned how to warm formula with one hand and type with the other. Emma got bronchiolitis at 10 months and I sat on a plastic chair in urgent care for 9 hours praying she'd keep breathing evenly. On her first day of kindergarten, her shoes had little silver stars on them from the clearance rack, and I cried in the parking lot because I couldn't believe I had kept us alive long enough to get there. She used to ask about her father in these small, careful ways that broke me worse than any scream could. Did Daddy like pancakes? Did Daddy know my name? Would Daddy know me if he saw me? I always said yes. I always said he loved her. I always said he would have stayed if he could. And every time I said it, something inside me twisted, because there had always been one splinter in my heart I could never pull out. Ethan left the hospital too easily. He didn't fight Robert. He didn't even hesitate long. I told myself for years that he was trapped, pressured, scared. Anything but willing. Because if he was willing, then I had built my daughter's whole childhood on a lie. But he didn't know one thing. Grief made me sharp. Hunger made me sharper. I went back to school at 31 and finished the accounting degree I had dropped when I married Ethan. Numbers made sense when people didn't. Numbers didn't flatter. They didn't manipulate. They didn't kiss your forehead and vanish. By 36, I was a certified forensic accountant. By 40, I had my own small firm. I specialized in fraud review, estate disputes, hidden asset tracing. Funny, right? The widow they tried to starve out became the woman other people hired when money disappeared. I bought a brick house with a blue front door when Emma was 13. I paid cash for her first used car at 16. I helped her through architecture school without borrowing a cent. She graduated top of her class at 22. Robert sent flowers with the card signed simply, Grandfather. Elaine arrived at the ceremony 20 minutes late, left before photos, and still managed to tell a friend in front of me that Emma's success must come from the Callaway side. Some people don't change. They just get older. Emma got engaged at 20 to a kind man named Noah Bennett. He was steady, honest, the kind of man who looked people in the eye when he spoke. Which is probably why I trusted him the first week I met him. His family was warm in a way that still made me nervous.